Welcome. It's 1 o'clock on Monday. Must be the Deal Doctor live stream. Thank you all for joining, whoever's out there. I hope my regulars are out there and maybe a few extra folks. So first thing I want to do is talk about the COVID executive order. I hope you all were watching the news or heard the news, have read the news since 6 o'clock last night. Paul was on it. We were, many of the management team was watching the governor's announcement, and Paul immediately sent out a interpretation of that as it regards 5-star. So if you are unclear about what impact it has on the real estate industry, 5-star is taking the position that it doesn't have any impact on us continuing to work, except that we can't do open houses, no more than 2 households in the home at the time of showings. So, for example, if I showed up with my buyer, the seller would need to vacate the property because that would be 3 versus 2. All in all, it was more a plea for everyone to do their best to make this thing go away, to try to again flatten the curve on this second or third wave, whatever it is, by wearing masks. And whether you agree with whether masks are effective or not, that's what we're being asked to do. More than that, though, if you have any questions on how 5-star is responding to the executive order of last night at 6 o'clock, read Paul's posts. I know that he's sending out emails, and you are getting emails from your local associations about the interpretation of those. So please refer to you. I don't want to spend a lot of time dwelling on it. What I do ask is this. Some businesses are going to close again, such as restaurants, and they've had a tough year. They've had a dreadful year. And this time they're going to go through this without economic stimulus or unemployment funds. That's my understanding. Now, I ask you to patronize those businesses, to go out of your way, if you're able, to order food, for example, from a restaurant that has to close for the next 3 weeks. And let's try to work together to keep those businesses alive. It's a tough thing to take your life savings and pour it into a new business or even an existing business and have it fail because of no fault of your own, and this is a very difficult situation for all of us. So personally, I intend to support my local restaurants as best I can by takeout orders, curbside service, whatever it takes that is within the law. Okay, now let's move on. The title of this is, You Want to Do What? Let me get back to you. And as you can imagine, Eric and I, Kim, we all get, Paul, Greg, we all get a lot of calls that leave us scratching our heads about what are you trying to accomplish there? And why would you do that? And even the agent, when they call, are very often is thinking, I don't understand what the buyer or seller is asking for. One of the biggest, most frequent situations we run into is what is called a right of first refusal. Now, I want to point out that a lot of agents mislabel it as the first right of refusal. That would suggest that there's a second right of refusal, and there's not. The right of first refusal is exactly what it says. It gives one of the parties the right to first refuse to remove a contingency, for example, which would then allow the other party to take some sort of action. But it requires that that party who has that control, that stipulation in the contract, must first say, no, I'm not going to remove the contingency about this underlying sale of my house, that I have to sell my house in order to continue this process of getting the sale closed. Now, a seller can stipulate that too. A seller can also say, we accept your offer, but if you don't have your house sold within a certain period of time, we're going to give you, a week to sell your house. But if you don't have that sold, then you're going to have to remove the contingency and move forward with a closing. Well, that's problematic because maybe the buyer doesn't have the ability to do that financially. They know they have to close, and yet when they're faced with in the position that they have to remove that contingency, and they turn to their agent needs to be knowledgeable enough to say, you can't do that because you have to sell your house in order to get the funds in order to close. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And as a result, the agent writes up an addendum which removes the contingency of the underlying sale of the house. All of a sudden now the buyer may not qualify for the mortgage. They don't have the liquid funds for down payment. And it turns into a mess because they have essentially removed the contingency which protected them in the first place. When you encounter a contract that has a right of first refusal, on the Grand Rapids Association of Realtors, you have to mark it as pending. Other boards have different rules. Some of them take it as active backup. Some of them require that it be listed as active contingent. In any case, it should not continue, according to most boards' rules, as an active listing because it is no longer a level playing field. The new buyer who comes in when there is a right of first refusal in place does not have the same ability to buy that property as that first buyer who has control over that through that contract and must first refuse to meet the terms that the seller has stipulated in order for that seller to act on a second offer. Sound confusing? It is. And bear in mind that Eric and I and Kim get these questions all the time. But on Saturday morning, Eric and I and one of our agents had a conference call on one of the most bizarre counter offers from a seller that I've ever heard in more than 30 years. This is a doozy. Get this. The seller countered the buyer's backup offer that they could be the second backup offer, and the seller put in a 72-hour clause that the buyer had to remove their contingency at any time if they were in primary position. If the first offer that was accepted for whatever reason went away and this first backup offer went away, they're now in primary position, right? But the seller retained the right to terminate that offer within 72 hours if, in fact, they got a better offer at any time. I don't know about you, but if I was a buyer, I wouldn't sign that you know, for anything. You basically are leaving yourself completely open to the seller's whim. If they get a backup offer to your primary, what is your primary offer? Your primary offer has the contingency that you have to close on your house, which you have an underlying offer, and the house should be marked as pending now, but the seller has this little right of first refusal language in there that says you have to remove your contingency within 72 hours if I get a better offer, if I, the seller, get a better offer that I want to act on, then you have to remove your contingency regarding closing on your house. Wow. Well, it took probably about 45 minutes to an hour of a conference call with Eric and I and this agent to sort out just how convoluted. It was like if you ever looked behind somebody's TV and stereo system and you saw a bunch of wires all tangled up together, that's how this was. We had to literally untangle all of the language that this agent and seller had put together and sent back to our agent. So ultimately, we got it sorted out. We provided a couple of options, and we recommended to the buyer that they not pursue this, that it didn't give them any security if they, in fact, ever became the primary offer. In fact, we had recommended language that the buyer could rescind that offer at any time prior to being put on notice that they, in writing, that they were in fact the primary offer. The seller didn't like that, apparently. So when you get into these situations and you feel like you're all of a sudden sinking in quicksand, give Eric and myself a call. And we will do our very best to sort through it, even if it's like untangling the wires behind a TV set. Okay. Question.
It was from 5 minutes ago, but it was from Mary Nunman. Do you have the
Hang on, Mary, I'm almost there. On a G-car buy-sell agreement, can a seller terminate a contract if the closing date was on 10/7 and there still is not a closing date? No addendum has been submitted to extend the closing date. UC as of 8/27. I'm not sure what UC is. Lender is not responding. Seller wants to terminate and put it back on the market. I'm not an expert on the G-car form. I'd like to see if I can get Kim and or Eric to weigh in here. My understanding of G-car, though, is that like the West Michigan Regional Purchase Agreement, it is not a time is of the essence contract. But again, I'd like to see Eric and Kim weigh in here on that. At the point.
She said UC is under contract as of.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mary. At the point that that contract end date occurred, either an extension should have been written up by the parties if they wanted to continue, or a termination should have been written up by the seller that they didn't want to continue. If the seller wants to terminate now, I would say they probably can, but they got to put it in writing. They have to take some action in order to do that. They can't simply assume that the contract is dead because of the dynamic which I have often referred to as kicking the can down the road. For the last more than a month, the two parties have behaved in a manner which led the other one to assume that they were both working together to continue this contract. And the actions of doing that are, in some judges' minds, as important as the words on the paper when it comes to a contract which is not time is of the essence. I'm looking here just really quickly, if I may, to see if I can pull up the GCAR form. Give me just a second. Forgive me, it's a quick scan through here. I, so far, am not finding a time is of the essence provision in this contract. Oh, wait a minute. Aha, paragraph 37 in the GCAR purchase agreement. Time is of the essence. Time is of the essence with respect to this agreement. Time limits shall be strictly observed. So, according to the GCAR form, that would suggest to me, again, I want Kim and Eric to weigh in on this opinion because they're more familiar with it. But I would, if it says very clearly in the GCAR form that it is a time is of the essence contract, and therefore the deal died on the 8th day of October. I would put that in writing, however, and have the seller sign it that they're terminating, they're moving on, and go from there. We've apparently got another question. Is it a follow-up?
She said for clarification, and below there. Do you see where I put that in? Down below.
Yeah. Live stream questions. Okay. Yeah, Mary, I don't think they can, and again, in the time is of the essence paragraph on the GCAR purchase agreement, paragraph 37 says it's very clear that it is a time is of the essence contract. This buyer doesn't have to sign the termination, in my opinion. However, it's a legal question, and I would suggest that the seller get clarity from an attorney or have an attorney write a letter to the previous buyers saying, sorry, nice try, but you're out. You were out as of October 8, according to paragraph 37 of the GCAR purchase agreement. Again, Eric, Kim, if you're out there, weigh in, please. But I'm pretty confident that that deal died on the 8th of October. Okay? See if I can go back to where I was. Okay, so that one was the second backup with a 72-hour clause. That was probably the craziest convoluted mess that I have seen in more than 30 years. And ultimately, our recommendation was to the buyer that they don't pursue that. It becomes it would become very dangerous. They could get all the way down, halfway, 3/4 of the way through the process, and then suddenly be slapped with this demand by the seller that they remove their contingency about getting their house closed, which is where their funds are coming from in order to close. And they've invested in mortgage inspections. They may have already hired movers, all sorts of things. So that got pretty crazy. But we managed to kind of talk through it and get to an answer. You may have seen the post from Tammy Vroma on the two offers with low pre-qualification letters. Again, an unusual situation, not that it's unusual to get low pre-qualification letters which are not at the sales price. And that's a really important thing. When I get a pre-qualification letter that is below the price that the buyer has offered, I immediately ask the seller to counter that this acceptance, if there's to be an acceptance, this acceptance is subject to getting a pre-qualification letter in the amount of the sales price and applicable mortgage within 24 or 48 hours. If you're talking about 3 to 5% of the sales price, it may not make any difference. Now, another way to handle it, and I talked with Tammy, and I know a lot of agents weighed in on it, that really it doesn't make a lot of difference. It would be no different, in my view, than if the appraisal came in $3,000 to $5,000 high, and the buyer wanted to continue regardless of that. They could have the mortgage denied and get out of the contract. And under the West Michigan Regional Purchase Agreement, it actually expressly states that in the contract, in the purchase agreement. But let's pretend for a moment that they wanted to move forward. What do you do then? Well, if they have the cash available in a demand deposit account, they could make that information available. They could provide proof of funds. For example, in this particular case, the down payment would be approximately $4,000. Closing costs would be about $4,000. And the difference that they would have to make up between their pre-approval letter and the sales price is $5,000. Therefore, as the seller's agent, you want to see proof of funds of at least $13,000, that they have enough money for the down payment, closing costs, and the additional cash, just as if it was the appraisal came in higher than expected. So I hope that helps answer that question. In this particular case, there were two offers with low pre-qualification letters. And frankly, I don't think I've ever seen two on a listing of mine, but in this market, that's not too surprising. Ultimately, though, it still boils down to which is the best offer fundamentally. Which of them has the strongest credit rating, which of them has the most money down, all of those things. You know, is it a cash offer? Where is it in the process? If they have an underlying offer, where is that in the process of closing? All of those things. So, again, if you get an offer with a low pre-qualification letter, it doesn't really make any difference. You might want to check with the lender and see if they have an issue with it, but it shouldn't make any difference in if they have the available or the cash available to do that. If they have to get an available gift letter or something, money from a family member or a friend, that may change it completely. So you're going to have to be in communication with the lender to understand whether or not this is something you can do from the buyer's standpoint, and to get that verification if you're the listing agent that this is in fact something that can be done. Okay, moving on. One more. Got a call about a short sale. Seller wanted to do a short sale. And so they were going through the process of building this short sale offer, and the agent wanted to know some details about short sales and what happens, what's the process. And as I went through and started to explain that, first of all, the seller had to provide a hardship letter, had to complete a hardship letter giving all of their financial details and so on, and why they felt entitled to selling their house for less money than they owed on it. And that was the first step. And they hadn't even done that yet. And I explained the kind of time frame that they were facing if that's how early in the process this seller was. Then it came out that in the listing contract, it said that it was subject to, first of all, we found out that the seller had vacated the property, that they had abandoned the property, they moved out. Wow. That throws a whole different light on it, because if they were faced with a potential foreclosure or had already been foreclosed upon, the lien holder could accelerate the redemption period and take possession of the property immediately in order to protect that investment. That's something that a lot of agents don't know, is that the redemption period goes away if the buyer or the seller who is facing foreclosure or a short sale moves out, because the lien holder has a right to protect that capital. Then we got another surprise. It said that all offers will be subject to review and approval by the bankruptcy court. Ruh-roh. That's a different thing. Now, forget about foreclosure. Forget about the short sale. Now it's all up to the bankruptcy court. The bankruptcy court is going to determine how much the lien holder gets. It may be short of what they are owed, probably. But in any case, it's no longer a short sale. It's not a foreclosure. It's a bankruptcy sale. And those are different and very time-consuming than a short sale or foreclosure, because the court is involved. There will be appraisals required from the court in order to establish value. And it is a long, slow process. So when you get into these unusual situations, and we run into them with vacant land and all sorts of things, give Eric or myself a call. That's what we're here for. And we will answer to the best of our ability. If we don't know the answer, we will get it for you. If that means calling the MAR hotline, if it means calling Gail Anderson or one of our other attorneys that we use, we will do that. But that's what the Deal Doctor system is all about. Number 616-490-0902. That's the best way to reach us, because we very often are on the phone all day, one call after another, and we take them or return them as quickly as we can. So with that, it gets crazy out there. And sometimes you run into very unusual situations. We'll help you work through them. And please feel free to give us a call. It's a beautiful sunny day. I hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you here next week. Thanks.